Latifah, and you're watching CTV on the Higher Learning Network. Put your head right.
Been long overdue.
It's long overdue. It's definitely time for reparations. We've been talking about 400 years.
It has to be admitted, and that has been the biggest issue with the reparations.
We'll begin this morning with our first speaker from the National Reparations Organization, Mr. Cam Howard. Mr. Howard.
I want to thank Alderman Sawyer for agreeing to introduce the resolution. I want to thank Commissioner Boykin for getting us to an actual resolution that we can all be proud of. And I want to thank Dr. Conrad Worrell for his tireless effort in leading us in this strategy, and leading in COBRA in this strategy. In COBRA, for 30 years, sought to educate, motivate, and mobilize our people around the issue of reparations. Reparations for centuries of crimes committed by governments, corporations, institutions, and individuals acting independently. For obvious reasons, the primary government target was the federal government. Through executive proclamation, the Special Field Order number 15 that promised 40 acres and a mule, and constitutional amendments like the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, redress in the forms of an economic footing and full citizen rights were initially granted. However, the 40 acres were seized by a new executive order, and each of the constitutional amendments was subverted by white terrorist practices and policies. Here in Chicago, a city founded by a black man born of a Haitian enslaved mother, has its full share of apartheid policies and practices against the black community. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the 1919 white attack, mislabeled the 1919 race riot, a week of white terror that left thousands of blacks homeless, hundreds injured, and many killed. 2019 also marks the 50th anniversary of the illegal COINTELPRO operations of the FBI that was carried out by the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and the Chicago Police Department that left Chairman Fred Hampton and Defense Captain Mark Clark murdered of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. We can also mention here the John Burge terror regime that still has victims suffering in incarceration. The systematic racial cleansing of black teachers from Chicago public school system, along with the closing of 53 schools, 4 of which were high schools in the same community. The Chicago City Council and the Office of the Mayor can fulfill their obligation of addressing the apartheid actions of former administrations by establishing the Chicago Descendants of Enslaved Africans Reparations Commission. We're here to make the demand reparations now.
We're now going to hear from Mr. Conrad Worrell. Mr. Worrell.
Good morning, everyone. We stand here as representatives of the movement for reparations that began in the late 19th century, led by a black woman by the name of Callie House, who organized the National Ex-Slave Bounty and Pension Association that fought for formerly enslaved Africans to receive pensions for their oppression prior to the Civil War. So for the record today, I'm suggesting that this commission's first document ought to be the 1921 Race Relations Commission, 800 pages from the race riots and the brutality that it was exercised against black people in the riot of 1919. I'm suggesting that this commission, when established, examine the transatlantic slave trade report that was conducted at the Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies that lays out from the research of 200 African American scholars throughout the United States as the impact of the transatlantic slave trade and how that rolled out in the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. And finally, Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote an article in 2014 in the Atlantic magazine, A Case for Reparations, in which he examined the housing ripoff of black people through contract buying on the West Side that culminated into millions and millions of dollars of black people being ripped off. So this commission that Alderman Sawyer is providing leadership in with the support of Dr. Willie Wilson is a very important continuation of the demand for reparations as reparations of African people is being discussed and organized throughout the world.
All right. Thank you very much. Now we're going to hear from Alderman Roberto Maldonado.
I'm very grateful and honored to be part of this coalition to bring about parity, fairness to African Americans in Chicago and to Latinos who have African descent. I want to thank Alderman Sawyer for his leadership, and I also want to thank Alderman Villegas, who brought about the provision to make sure that Latinos with African descent that will be part of this ordinance. And especially I want to thank Dr. Willie Wilson, who was really the head and the inspiration behind this piece of legislation. Thank you.
I'm Alderman Raymond Lopez of Chicago's 15th Ward. I represent African Americans and Latinos together. And I'm proud to stand here with Dr. Wilson and this eclectic group of people to demand a commission to finally have substantive talks about reparations for the descendants of slaves. It is time to repair the damage slavery has caused. And there's nothing wrong with having a conversation about making things right and about making a people whole once again. Let's do this, let's start here, and let's continue this conversation until we make reparations a reality. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank Dr. Willie Wilson for raising this issue to such a higher height than it has been and giving us the opportunity to have this dialogue. I'm certainly thankful to Alderman Sawyer in the City Council, who is leading the effort with legislative action, and we look forward to following his lead in the state legislature. And I look forward to being the sponsor of legislation in Springfield to make sure that we make what we know and what we want reparations to be now a reality here in the state of Illinois. Thank you.
I want to thank God for this day. What a glorious day this is for the city of Chicago. Reparations now, reparations now, reparations now, reparations now. Look, I also want to thank God for Dr. Willie Wilson and his leadership. Give it up for him. But most of all, I want to thank the people of the reparations movement for keeping a constant fire on this issue. Look, I want to thank Cobra and Dr. Conrad Worrell. I'm proud to just have had a role in terms of helping to craft this final document that we have before us. But let me tell you what this is. This is a moral issue. This is a moral imperative. That from 1619 to 2019 is 400 years. In the book of Genesis, it says that God said to Abram, for 400 years you'll be in a strange land. Your people will be in a strange land. They will be inflicted with pain. But at the end of that 400 years, they will come out with great possessions. This is the end of that 400 years. We got to start this movement now. We got to make sure that we get this bill across the finish line, that we get this commission, We got to deal with it, and we'll deal with it now. I'm looking forward to working with this coalition to get it done. Thank you so much. God bless you.
And so, as Dr. Willie Wilson has asked us to do a few weeks ago, we were able to bring Hispanic clergy and Hispanic leaders together with African American leaders, and we began to discuss the topic of reparations. And so I'm here today to tell you that this is a conversation that has been had, and this is a conversation that we desire as Hispanics and as African Americans to see move forward towards that unity that is required amongst God's people and amongst the citizenship of this great city of ours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. So this is the culmination of countless hours of work and behind-the-scenes efforts, many, many meetings, dinners, and lunches. And one of the leaders of the work to date on this, and one of the co-sponsors of the bill that's going to the floor today, I'm pleased to introduce Alderman Roderick Sawyer.
Right. Thank you, and good morning to everyone. I'm Roderick Sawyer, and I'm glad to serve as Alderman of the 6th Ward and co-sponsor of this groundbreaking resolution. I want to thank all my partners here today, my fellow colleagues, Representative Davis, Attorney Richard Boykin, who helped, was a great part in crafting the bill. Of course, I want to give a great thanks to Dr. Willie Wilson, who's presented the, thank you. His love for black people is manifested in his willingness to spend money and make an investment in the reparations and the repair of black people. But I really want to thank two people here today that have enlightened me personally, and that's Cam Howard and Dr. Conrad Worrell. I'll give them a great thank you. And the members of Cobra. They opened my eyes once we talked about this, because quite honestly, when we first talked about this, it wasn't right. And we went back to the board, and they instructed us and enlightened us, gave us things to read and gave us material. And I realized this fight has been going on for 129 years, and we still haven't gotten it right. It's going on for 129 years. You heard Dr. Worrell say one of the leaders over 100 years ago got arrested for even bringing it up. We know that this is going to be an uphill battle, but we cannot stop this conversation. We have to keep the conversation going for the descendants of enslaved Africans here in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, this United States of America. We don't have to study it anymore. We have to implement it. So let's implement it. Reparations now. I also have the distinct honor today to introduce someone to you that you already know, but someone who's been in the forefront in the fight for the advancement of black people here in the city of Chicago and all over the country, none other than our own Dr. Willie Wilson.
I want to thank the Lord for his amazing grace. I want to thank all the pastors who's here, all the aldermen, Maldonado, thank him for being here. My good friends, Alderman Sawyer, Commissioner Boykin, Conrad Worrell, and Brother Howard, and all the other different organizations who's here today. I want to thank everybody for coming out. And up until recently, I got involved with this whole situation was because I saw a debate on the president debate, and I said, well, is this going to go anywhere, or are they just using it for political reasons only? I said, so I'm going to get involved and put some dollars behind it in Chicago, and let's try to get it passed in Chicago. So I reached out to the Latino brothers and sisters as well as our African-American alderman brothers and sisters as well, and I must say this much here, there's no better person to carry this bill than Alderman Sawyer. I want y'all to give him a good round of applause as he can help us, all right? And Alderman Bernardo, where he's here? Oh, right here. Give him a hand as well, all right? And this reparation is people who from African descent. Right now, this reparation is going to cause for a commissioner to be be granted to us, and we're going to try to carry those things out. Free education, stop this violence, homelessness, senior citizen, food, medical, et cetera, and all those things because our communities suffer a lot. So the fight is not ending just in Chicago. It's going to Springfield. After that, hopefully that career world and national over will take this whole thing national. And I appreciate the fact that they've been on the fighting line all these years. I have to come along to be able to have the finances put behind it and make this work. We hired a full-time staff person, Beecher Boy. Where you at, Beecher? Right here, all right, thank you. She's heading this up on my staff here, along with several other organization people as well. There's more work needs to be done. There's more money going to be put behind this whole situation as well, right? This is not a political situation. This is about African American slave descent. I want to make that very clear, all right? We must stop this violence. People must get education. We got to stop it and make it work. What I want to say right now, I'm going to give a plea that Alderman Sawyer and the coalition of the Latina make this thing work for us. We got to get behind them. And we will get behind them. We're going to fight for what's right. We're going to support the whole thing.
To create a panel. What do you actually think this is going to accomplish? You think this is going to go anywhere? Are you going to accomplish anything?
Well, we know if you don't do nothing, it ain't going nowhere, So we got to get started and get it going. But I'm going to let Brother Sawyer speak to that as well, and also Monado.
Well, I couldn't echo that sentiment more. If we do nothing, nothing will happen, like Dr. Wilson stated. So this is the first step in having a conversation. We have to acknowledge that the atrocities that were inflicted upon descendants, enslaved Africans and the descendants of enslaved Africans has never been redressed. We have to acknowledge that first. So in order for us to really understand reparations, let's understand why we need it. We have to acknowledge that we were wrongfully enslaved. This might have been one of the worst atrocities to humankind in the history of our world. The enslavement of Africans here in the United States. We have to acknowledge that, and there has been nothing to recompense the enslaved Africans as of yet. We have to devise some plan, and we have to have a discussion about why this happens and what we do going forward. So this is the first step in having that conversation, hopefully crafting that will turn into an ordinance and to implement it and to right the wrongs that have been inflicted upon us, not just locally, but nationally as well.
Okay.
I had a conversation last night with the mayor's office that we're going to look forward to having further conversations about it, but we're moving forward. So let's be clear about that. Sorry? Well, I did not ask her to sign on. I've never asked the mayor to sign on anything I've had. I want to ask my colleagues, my fellow aldermen, to sign on, and I'm hopeful that we'll get a very robust count by the time we file this resolution this morning.
All right.
Yes. I have to say that the majority of the Latino members of the City Council from the Latino caucus, they are in support of this resolution. And in answering to your question, since 1994, when I was first elected to the county board, I heard members from the African American caucus at that time on the county board about reparations. Never, never, never we did anything about that. This is the first time, thanks to Alderman Sawyer, that we are going to take some concrete efforts to start the process that hopefully will result in actual legislation that will be enacted. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are now proceeding to the floor of the City Council with the aldermen to present this resolution. Thank you all for coming.
I think it went very well. We were proud that the news media showed up and all these wonderful people came today as well. And so now it's going to be introduced into City Council today. And hopefully 30 to 60 days that we can get the thing done here. And January we're going to do it for the state, Representative Will Davis. So we're going to keep the pressure up and keep it going.
It's been long overdue. Our ancestors, they built this country. We haven't got no recompense. Everybody else got it. The Japanese, the Jewish people got it. And we deserve it.
I look for a unified Black Chicago first and foremost. I look for the ability to change the reality of African people within the city of Chicago. I look for this to be an example for other municipalities around the country to take up the arms and the banner of closing a bill that's way past due, if you will.
Just imagine if the reparations had taken place when they originally started in 1600. If they had originally started then, all we wanted was an equal opportunity, an equal chance, and that's what reparations does. It brings everything back to where it should have been in the first place.
So there has to be an admission of guilt. And until that admission is accomplished, I don't think the bill will move forward. But today, admission is going to happen.
I'd like to see the city of Chicago as a global city and a global leader take this step and lead the world on something that the whole world should be contributing to, because it wasn't just us, the whole world lost.
This is going to be historic, it's going to be unprecedented, and it may show other jurisdictions that a coalition between blacks and browns is really doable and reachable.